Alright, hello. Just doing just the first impressions of the Sweet Potato 2 surfboard. It's I don't know if I'm in the shot there, but as you can see, it's a fairly wide tail, sort of fishy outline. It's got obviously some curve in the tail there, unlike a fish, and that just sort of helps it sort of turn tighter, so more of a modern fish. Now the reason I got this board was been riding longboards now for 20 years I reckon, and I started riding longboards just because I was always a bit thicker, a bit chunkier. So if I've got a Swedish background, I've got like that sort of, bit of a Polynesian build. But this board is thick and chunky. So you sort of got to get a board to match your body shape if you're going to ride a shortboard. Now, transitioning from a longboard, it's important that you've got that dimensional stability. It's quite tricky. After 20 years of riding a longboard, you're so accustomed to the dimensions and the stability from the width that going to a shortboard, it just feels like you're riding a paddle pop stick. So this has got it's actually very fast. So you've got what do they call that? You've got a concave rail to rail, and then you've got a little high point through to the sort of the back fin. So you've got two channels down there with a little bit of a higher point there, not as high as the rails. So I don't know if they call that. Do they call that V? But that sort of certainly washes out there, and then it just sort of flows off the tail, still in a double concave. But that concave goes halfway up the board, even a little bit further. But it's hopefully you can see all that in the shot. Nice wide tail. It's so good with this. I'd never buy a board without deck grip anymore. As good as they are for your back foot, I think they're as good for your front foot. Now, I've transitioned from longboarding, and I was riding sort of 8-footers, 7'6", 7-footers, 6'10" was as short as I got. When I got this, I was 103 kilos. Now, 173 centimeters, which is 5'8", that's pretty sweet potato dimensions. So, I was pretty heavy for 5'8" guy. 103. My heaviest was 118. I was getting around like a porker, just pie eater. But I've got down to 103, and I'm quite impressed with myself because I rode this at 103, and I've just cooped it. This board is notoriously difficult to get used to, especially your foot placement. Even if you're a shortboarder, but being a longboard rider, you've just got you got to get used to being in the sweet spot again. So my first ride on this board was shocking. It was embarrassing. It was a slow point break. It was super small, 1 foot. I just couldn't get it going. It looked like I'd surfed. It was on my 3rd day of surfing. That's the thing with picking up a new discipline and starting to ride shortboards again. Unfortunately, you've got to go backwards. My longboardings I'd probably describe as advanced intermediate. More of a radical sort of style, progressive style, more than the traditional, nose riding. And I just got to an age, I'm turning 48 this year, I'm 47 now. I just didn't want to miss out on high performance shortboarding. So my goal is to get like a zero gravity or something like that. I look at those Woolly TV reviews and those Salus reviews. That seems to be a good board, and you can get them in fat boy dimensions. So that's good as well. And I'll probably go for the 610. Obviously being a more refined shape, but why all that's important is a lot of the guys going for this board in these sort of dimensions probably are older guys. It's a way you can get surfing on smaller waves. Obviously having that literage there, the volume, which some people say literage isn't important. When you're near 100 kilos, literage and volume in a board is everything. It makes all the difference. And just as a guide for people, I think when you're heavier at an intermediate level, just halve your weight. So if you're 100, 50 litres is good for you. If you're better, take 5 off. If you're worse, put 5 on, 10. Work out what's sort of good for your volume, paddling easily into waves. Now, because volume's a friend, especially like if you're at a break where there's a current and things like that, the last thing you want to be doing is swimming out there. So it's nice to be on top of the board where you can, paddle around more and get a lot more waves. Now, when I got this board, this is the 6.2. It's got, it's good when you're coming from a longboard because you've got that familiarity with the dimensions. So 23 wide, 3 inches thick. That feels familiar when you're, coming from a longboard. It's shocking getting used to how little nose is in front of you. So this is a 6.2. I wanted the 6.4, I just couldn't get it. I think the 6.4 would have been awesome, but I've actually brought my weight down from 103 down to 94. So I'm heading in the right direction because I just thought, I've got the wrong board. I wish I had the 6.4. I think that's in at 57 litres. This is in at 52. And I just thought to myself, mate, you can afford to lose 20 kilos. So yeah, I've just decided to lose 10 as quickly as possible. And I'm just having some success doing that. This board now, because I like wearing I'm 47, 48 in a couple of months. Like I like wearing the float suits. Just if you get punished and things like that, you just got that added buoyancy. When you're coming up, from being dumped, you're copping the next wave. At least you can float, So I like wearing them. But now my weight's at 94. You've got to get your duck dive, technique right to get deep. Because with the float suit and this board at 52 litres, there's a lot of board there. And, I probably could have gone down to, perhaps a 5.8 or a 6. But, like I've also got to keep in mind that this board's a keeper and you want to be surfing in 10, 20 years, hopefully, fingers crossed. And, you probably want to have a little bit more volume in your boards then, just make it a little bit easier for yourself. Now, I surfed the board once in 1 to 2 foot at a slow point break, and it was just shocking. It was embarrassing. My stance is sort of notoriously close together at the best of times, but it was, very close together. I didn't have my back foot on the tail pad. It was just getting used to the board, and I just thought I'd made the biggest mistake. Thought this board's no good, but I went to Urban Surf. I think maybe 6 times, and I was right into that. But I started on longboards there because I was going to just go with my son. but like he, got one wave and hurt himself and things like that. So I just came in and abandoned the session. But before that, because we got there, I was pretty keen. We got there pretty early. There was an advanced session, so I took that on the longboard, and yeah, I can probably put that into the video. But yeah, I just did it on a mid length, and I got down to so eight footers. And also did it on a 610, the Greedy Beaver, which is an awesome board for part of your transition. But they only make it in a 610, so I'd love to ride that Greedy Beaver as a sort of bigger board. But yeah, I've on the 6.2, and rain, hail or shine, I'm just riding this board. I'm not going to sort of anything else. Because I'm committed to, getting back on these boards. Now, as far as the durability goes, like, I've got a couple of, like stress points on the resin, but like they're super durable, like, this will outlast me. And what I've also done is use quite a few fins. Now, at no means am I a good surfer on this board at the moment, like just still struggling with the shortboard surfing, but I'll get there again. I was sort of like, probably when I stopped riding them, I was advanced intermediate surfer, and yeah, just sort of started riding longboards. But this like futures box, they're definitely the way to go. They're a lot, the FCS, they have 2 tabs, right? And it's just weaker. It's not it's the futures are just sort of, one big tab, the single tab they call it. And I just think it's one screw. I just think it's a better system. I think they've shown online that it's a stronger system too. So I'm starting to go with futures now. All my passports are all FCS, and then they have the FCS 1, FCS 2, like they'll come out with a 3, and where the other boards, go then. But I've test ridden like all the different fin configurations. I've only had it in like, slop, like, 2 foot max, and it's probably not a fair representation. Like, I probably had 60 waves or something on the board, and I probably only had 6 crackers. Where you go, that was fucking awesome, and you get an insight as to what the board can and will do in the future. Now, my theory on a heavier surfer riding and a bit of a power surfer, like riding the thruster, what I found as sort of like an intermediate surfer, like my foot placement probably isn't always the best, and on a larger board that your back foot needs to move a bit as well. You can't just put it in the same position and do everything like you can on some shorter boards. But what I found is if I had a larger fin, something like the Mikey February, I tried this as a twin, and like a twin with the trailer. I found it too unbalanced as a heavier surface. I think you have to be either very good or quite light, where your force doesn't pivot on the twin fins. Like, I can easily blow the tail out when I'm riding as a twin, and like a twin +1 and things like that. But I think when you've got like an even pattern with the thruster, it gives you a larger sweet spot, and it gives you a consistent fin size, so it's all are just sharper, like, you know, easier to sort of put some turns down. Now I've only had like, you know, haven't completed a cut back on it yet because it's been like 2 foot, but I've certainly put some power down. What this board is amazing for, that little bit of curve in the tail there, right? Like unlike a fish, which would, you know, just be a straight rail, this has got a bit of curve in the tail, so it comes round. This is quite a refined tail at the very end, like it's thick, 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 and then it thins out there. So that's why they say you've got to, you know, surf the back foot on these. But it's just like going down the line, you could just sort of like, move your back foot. Like when you're coming up, move the back foot, and it just gives you that little fan snap. Like, and yeah, I'll go through the fin. So yeah, I started with the Panchos. Now he's probably one of the best surfers from Hawaii, top 10 in the 90s, sort of early 2000, but I just got him for his name. He's like a sick surfer, but these are the what are they? Futures Control Series Pancho. So it's a fiberglass fin. Not just pretty boring colour in that. I like a bit of colour on the boards, but yeah, like it's apparently the largest thruster set that Futures make, and it's fiberglass. I think if you're a heavier surfer, you like power surfing, always go with the fiberglass ones. I then tested it with the Mikey February's, right? And I couldn't give an honest review of these because I hadn't worked the board out. So then like I just left that rear fin in when tried it like again, but yeah, it just sort of didn't really work for me. Like, just hadn't worked the board out yet, and I was only surfed it a few times, and like it was just so shocking being on such a short board, you know, coming from a longboard. Put the thruster back in and just had some consistency with, you know, surfing the board, and just found like it was amazing sometimes. Like, you know, like 2 or 3 waves out of the session, you'd be like, oh my God, like I can't believe I've sort of, you know, made it, you know, to the end of the section. And even like if you stuff up your takeoff, you know, just being a bit slow and lazy on the takeoff, and I was behind the section, this board is fast enough to get around the section and make the wave. So it's very straight, so it's got like not much rocker, very flat through like the middle lengthwise. Obviously it's got a lot of curve through the middle with the double concave, so it just pushes a whole lot of water out there, but it's wide and thick, so it gets up in planes very easily. Now, what was good was trying the Legacy Futures. They've got a number system that you've got to get used to. These were the large P8s, and in the honeycomb, so they're nice and light. But it was like huge, you know, thing that I noticed was that these would be great for a bigger board, like, you know, a mid-length or something, but it just made it so easy to sort of, you know, go from, you know, bottom to top. Like you just sort of like turn pop, you know, it just go up there so easily, and just sort of climb the whitewash, and you could even just sort of get over sections very easily. But what's interesting is obviously the pivot fin is more of a stand-up fin. You've got less rake of the fin tip coming, you know, back, like compared to that. The Pancho's got to go a lot further back. So this, with the wide tail, made the board feel a bit squirrely. And sort of what I noticed is I went to these bad boys. This has probably got to be the best looking fin. Like when it gets some light behind it, like, mate, it's the best looking fin in the game. and being a sort of semi-fish, like at San Diego, of origin, that Jeff McCullum, I don't know, just looks like some sort of, dude making fishes in that area, because that's where they come from, and they've gone for a hybrid keel, so it like, testing all these fins has really taught me something about surfing. I've been, surfing for like, 30 years, longer, and I always thought of fins as like how it sort of penetrated into the board, right? But after testing all these different fins and realising that the pivot fin, like, was very sort of top to bottom, squirrely, what settled the tail down was the extra rake. And I went back to the thruster because I think best looking fin ever made, I reckon, this Jeff McCullum, made by Captain Finco. But I'll buy a dedicated twin fin, because I really think these 5 fin boxes don't really suit the twin fin. There's one you can get from they rip you off with the delivery to Australia, but Noel Salas gets his fins made from them. NVS, Naked Viking Surf, they make a fin that sort of pushes the fin back by a twin fin pushes the fin back by an inch or so, but then you can clip your heels when you got the fin sticking out. But yeah, what this bit did, and these rake back quite a lot, that gives you a lot of drive. It's that tip, so it's the upright for the pivots of up and down, but for that drive and keeping in that tail a lot, especially when you've got a wider tail board, the rake on the fin I really like. So love this fin, but it just doesn't go as well as the thruster, as I've sort of previously described. What else can I say about the board? Paddles very easily, so like you just get used to being like, this is over 3 inches thick, paddles very well, quite flat through the middle, not a lot of rocker, so you're not pushing against the wave, paddles in very easily. On the probably 6 awesome waves that I've had, it goes down the line, it's very fast, it will to do these little turns, and I haven't had it in any good waves to see really how any of these fins go, so that's the other thing, playing around with these futures now that it's just another sort of aspect to the surfing, and what's amazing is how like a few mil will change the behaviour of the surfboard and your surfing and how it affects it. But what else can you say about the surfboard reviews? It's definitely a board I would buy again. I'd probably get the 6 foot with what I know now, but that's because I've lost weight, right? And I hope to lose more, but I probably would have gone for the 6.0. I think, yeah, that would be the limit. Yeah, just give you a look at the board. Alright, how high you can see. It doesn't really go under my arm, so I sort of I carry it backwards, I'll see how. Fuck. So there. And these Helium, very strong, very light. So yeah, fantastic board. I'd recommend you get one. If you can demo one, do that and just see which one you like. But remember, I don't think I really got used to this board until I was about five or six surfs in. Alright, thanks guys, aloha.